We mentioned last time that there are 5 conditions needed for a hadith to be authentic. One of them is the chain must be connected, and when it's not connected, you'll see many examples of that. The second thing is the narrator to have be adil, just, and we explained what that is. And when he's not just, we'll mention examples of that in Mishkat al-Masabi. And one is them to have good memory, and if they don't, we'll mention examples of that. But the last 2 conditions are harder to understand, which is Adamul Shuduz, it can't contradict something which is more authentic, and Adamul Illa, it can't have a hidden defect. So to understand these last 2 conditions, I have made examples for you because these are tricky conditions. It doesn't mean you're qualified after these examples to work them out, but it gives you an idea of understanding these 2 conditions better. Let's do the example of Adam Shuduz, where you contradict someone who's more reliable. Now, these examples require for you to stay focused. And they are from the takhassus level, but hopefully you will, inshallah, understand them. We have a hadith which Imam Abu Dawood reports from Hafs bin Umar. Now, can you see the screen? Hafs bin Umar says, Hammam narrated from Qatada, from Salih ibn Abil Ja'ad, from Ma'adan ibn Abi Talha, from Abu Darda, from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Man hafidha ashra ayat min awwali surat al-Kahf usima min fitnat al-Dajjal. Whoever memorizes the first 10 ayahs of Surah Al-Kahf is protected from the fitna of Dajjal. This Imam Abu Dawud reports with his chain. The second narration, Imam Ahmad reports in his Musnad from Muhammad bin Ja'far and Hajjaj, both great scholars of Hadith, report from Shu'bah that they heard Shu'bah say, who report from Qatada, i.e. the chain of this Hadith goes back to Qatada. Shu'bah and Hammam are both reporting from Qatada. Qatada alayhi madar al-Hadith. Qatada is the one where the chains go back to. Now here Qatada says, I heard from Salim ibn Abil Ja'ad, just like in the first narration, from Ma'dan, just like in the first narration from Abu Darda, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam is saying, Man qara ashra ayat min akhir al-Kahf usima fitna ad-Dajjal. Whoever reads the 10 ayahs from the end of Surah Al-Kahf is protected from the fitna of Dajjal. I.e., this hadith goes back to Qatada. Qatada reports from Salih ibn Abil Ja'ad, from Ma'dan, from Abu Darda, the Prophet ﷺ said, one version where Hammam says it's the first 10, and Qatada says it's the last 10. And you may have heard this in many speeches. Some say first 10, some say last 10. Which one is it? Here is an example of shuduz, where ravis contradict others and we pull the chains together to work out who made a mistake. This is not shuduz, where you contradict people that are more authentic than you. Now, if you look at it in face value, Shu'bah and Hammam are both scholars of Hadith, and they contradict each other. One of them is making a mistake from Qatada, and we'll show you how. So who's right, who's wrong? What is the one the Prophet said? Well, Shu'bah bin Hajjaj is the greatest scholar than Hammam. So if we had to pick and choose, if we're doing a guessing game, if Hadith was like a mere guessing game, you would probably say, okay, Shu'bah's got a greater memory, he's less likely to make mistakes, so Shu'bah is right, that it's the last 10 verses of Surah Kahf. But alhamdulillah, Hadith is a proper field. It's not a guessing game. Let's look at the other chains of this Hadith. Imam Muslim reports in his Sahih from Muhammad bin Musanna, from Mu'adh bin Hisham, that his father, Hisham bin Sumbur, known as Hisham al-Dastawai, reports from Qatada, that is, whoever memorizes the first 10 ayahs of Surah Al-Kahf is protected from the fitna of Dajjal. What is happening here? i.e. Hisham al-Dastawi, who is a great scholar of hadith, is also reporting the same hadith from Qatada by saying the first 10. Imam Muslim reports, mentions at the end of this narration, that Shu'bah narrated the same hadith and said the last 10, and Hammam narrated it exactly as Hisham, that the first 10. Imam Muslim is pointing out this hadith goes back to Qatada, but two students of Qatada, Hisham al-Dastawai and Hammam bin Yahya, say from Qatada is the first 10. Shu'bah is the one that says it's last 10. So although Shu'bah is more strong as a scholar, he's contradicting two people. And two are more likely to be right than one if the two are authentic and reliable. And in this case, both are authentic and reliable narrators. But let's go further. Imam Ahmad reports from Ruh, who reports from Sa'id al-Maqburi from Qatada, that the Prophet said, and the chain rushed to saying, whoever memorized the first 10 ayahs of Surah Al-Kahf is protected from the fitna of Dajjal. Sa'id al-Maqburi from Qatada. What do we have here? We've got Hisham, we got Hammam, now we got Sa'id al-Maqburi, another great scholar of hadith. All three saying Qatada said the first 10. Shu'bah is the only one to say the last 10. Let's go further. Imam Ahmad in his Musnad reports from Shayban, from Hussein, from Shayban, from Qatada, that the Prophet said first 10. I.e., now we've got Sayyid al-Maqburi, Shayban, Haman, Hisham, all of them saying that Qatada with his chain said, the Prophet said the first 10 ayahs of Al-Kahf. Shu'bah is the only one to say the last 10. Let's go further. Imam Nasai in his Kubra reports the same hadith from Muhammad Bashar, from Muhammad bin Ja'far, that Shu'bah report from Qatada that the Prophet ﷺ said, the rest of the chain is the same, that but the hadith is whoever reads 3 ayahs from the Surah Al-Kahf is protected from the fitna of Dajjal. 3 ayahs from the beginning of Surah Al-Kahf. Now this contradicts the previous narrations. But who is saying this is Shu'bah from Qatada. In other words, Shu'bah is contradicting himself. Everyone so far said the first 10. Shu'bah is the only one to say the last 10. Now, Muhammad bin Ja'far, a great scholar of hadith, said Shu'bah also said that it's the first 3 from the Surah Al-Kahf. So not only is Shu'bah contradicting everyone else, he's contradicting himself by changing the 10 to the 3 and changing from the end to the beginning. This shows, again, that Shu'bah has not remembered the hadith as correctly. Then we have Nasai in his Kubra with his own chain, when Muhammad Ja'far also reports from Shu'bah, that Shu'bah narrated the same hadith and said 10 ayahs. He didn't even say the beginning or the end. In other words, everybody said the first 10 apart from Shu'bah. Shu'bah contradicted himself twice. And hence, that is clear evidence that Shu'bah has done shudud. He has contradicted others and he's made a mistake. And it's the first 10 of verses, not the last 10. On top of that, we have external evidence in a completely separate hadith, which Imam Tirmidhi and Muslim report with completely separate chains, where the Prophet on another situation, when he spoke about the fitna of Dajjal and how Dajjal will look, the Prophet said in that hadith, after explaining how Dajjal is, فَمَنْ رَآهُ مِنْكُمْ فَلْيَقْرَ فَوَاتِيَ سُورَةَ أَصْحَابِ الْكَهْفِ. Whoever amongst you sees the Dajjal, let him read the beginning verse of Surah Al-Kahf. This is a separate hadith from separate chains, where separate occasion the Prophet says, and these are authentic chains at the beginning of Surah Al-Kahf. In other words, that we have a separate chain that clarifies a separate hadith that is the beginning of Surah Al-Kahf. This is example of shudud. It's examples of where a mistake is made, and we find out the mistake. Even though he was a great Amir al-Mu'minin fil hadith, his memory was amazing. But even when he made a mistake, we could find it out by doing thorough checks. That's shuduz, where narrator makes a mistake. And even common sense tells you it's the first 10. Because if it's the last 10, it doesn't add up. Why? Because the last 10 start from alladhina, those. It should be the last 11 if you look at complete sentences. The last 10 are not a complete sentence by itself. On top of that, the first 10 talk about going to the cave and seeking protection from a fitna. So that's more likely to be, and that resembles what will happen at the time of the Dajjal, seeking protection from a fitna. Is that example clear to everyone before we go further? We'll do one example of illah, hidden defect. Okay. Okay, let's continue, inshallah. Next, example of hidden defect. Okay, there's a couple of narrations we mentioned. Imam Abu Dawood reports from Ibrahim bin Musa, the Jarir reports from Suhail ibn Salih, from his father, from Abu Hurairah, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Waladu zina sharru thalatha." The child of zina is the worst of the three. And that the Abu Hurairah said, I prefer to give a whip in the path of Allah than to free a child of zina. And Abu Hurairah attributed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this hadith. The Prophet says, it's not mentioned here, but another hadith of Hakim and his Mustadrak, that Abu Hurairah said, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I rather give a whip in the path of Allah than to free a slave that's born out of zina. Now this hadith, on top of that, we have another hadith. Imam Ibn Hibban reports with his chain that the Prophet ﷺ said, the person who's born from zina, one who boasts and gloats of his favors to others, one who's disobedient to his parents, and one who is an addict of wine will not enter Jannah. These two hadiths said the child who's born from zina outside marriage is condemned. He's the worst of the three. He's worse than his parents, and he'll not enter paradise. Now this hadith itself has a defect. It seems to contradict, and it does contradict the Quran, because it's not the child's fault. It's nothing to do with the child if his parents have done zina. And the Quran says, وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازْنُ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى. No one will bear the sins of another. So why is the child being called the worst of the three here? So what is happening here? We need to get to the bottom of this narration. What did the Prophet actually say? Did he say these words? We need to research this properly. So this is where the scholars of hadith do their full research, and the Aisha radiallahu anha explains what actually took place. So even though the previous two hadiths, the chain of Abu Dawood, it seems to be a sahih chain, and the second one Ibn Hibban said is reliable. But Imam Ahmad reports, so Imam Hakim reports with a strong chain from Aisha radiallahu anha, when she heard these statements, particularly the first one, Aisha radiallahu anha said that this is not correct. The Prophet never said such a thing. When she heard that Abu Hurairah radiallahu anha is saying that the Prophet said this, that Aisha radiallahu anha said this is incorrect. The Prophet never said this. And Aisha radiallahu anha mentions that how the Quran says no one will bear the sins of another. In this precognition of Hakim, another one, Aisha radiallahu anha mentions that. Then Aisha radiallahu anha mentions that what actually took place is, as for the fact that the child of zina is the worst of the three, the Prophet ﷺ wasn't talking about generally. The Prophet ﷺ was talking about a hypocrite, a munafiq who used to mock the Prophet Muhammad and used to make mockery and fun of him. And then some of the Sahaba said he's actually his parents did zina and had him. And the Prophet said he's the worst of the three, meaning he's worse than his parents. Meaning, although his parents did zina, that's sinful, He is worse than them. He's insulting God's messenger. He's insulting God's religion. He aims to harm Allah and His messenger. He was harming the believers. He's the worst of the three. Aisha radiallahu anha is saying that the hadith is on generic. It's not talking about every child of zina is worse. It's talking about this particular person. As for the hadith, which mentions that I rather give a whip in the path of Allah than free a child of zina, Aisha radiallahu anha said this is not what took place. The Prophet ﷺ was asked that, shall we tell our female slaves to do zina, and the money we make that we give in the path of Allah? Some of the Sahabas came and asked, if we tell our female slaves to basically do zina with people and then we'll get the money we give in the path of Allah, is that fine? And the Prophet explained, no, I'd rather give a whip in the path of Allah than to tell a woman to do zina because you're her master, and the money you get from the zina you will give in the path of Allah. That's wrong. A whip in the path of Allah is better than that. I.e., the person didn't say giving a whip in the path of Allah is better. Sorry, the narration mentions, they said when the Quran says freeing slaves, some of the Sahaba said that if I tell my slaves to do zina, then I free that slave, do I still get the reward? Is it rewarding? The Prophet said, no, it's better to give a whip in the path of Allah, even something as simple as a whip, than for you to tell your slave girl to do zina and then to free that slave. I.e., the means don't justify the end. You have to do things in the right way. It's better to do one good deed which is small than to do a massive good deed if you've done it in the wrong way, if you've used the wrong means. I.e., the hadith was misunderstood. As for the hadith of Ibn Hibban, the correct opinion, as the scholars of hadith mention, that the hadith is correct without the wording waladu zina. I.e., the correct wordings of the hadith is the one who shows his favors and gloats to others, who is disobedient to his parent and who's an addict of wine, will not enter paradise. That's correct. But the hadith, the original verse from the Prophet, didn't have the child of zina in there. This is a fabrication, a mistake added by others, as Allama al-Jawzi pointed out, such as Sheikh Mustafa Adawi pointed out, Ibn Hajar Asqalani said this week, Mullah al-Qari said it's a fabrication shape, and Nawud and other scholars of hadith said it's not correct. In other words, the scholars of hadith searched this in detail because the meaning seemed to contradict what we know is hidden defect. And they finally got to the bottom of it and explained and understood what the hadith actually meant. So the first hadith, even though the first hadith, the narrators were correct, they had met each other, they were authentic, they were reliable, the final conditions, a hidden defect was found, so we didn't accept the hadith. Okay, good. Any questions before we finish?